Now here's another one, Kinetic Nanobites. This is a brand. It's my buddy Josh's company. So these guys did nano-infused edibles, gummies specifically, and they start off with their mission statement and with some human faces. They're emphasizing a few things on the page, multidimensional, naturally sourced, heightened levels of precision. This is good, but I would probably not highlight this last one. You only want one or two things highlighted on the page because otherwise the eye doesn't know where to focus. You start looking here, you start looking there, it all disrupts the flow if they're not being directed in the right place. This little bit of the origins on their name, their branding, it's really emphasizing this is a wellness play. It's really, the goal of this slide is to say, I don't care if you're not a cannabis investor, but you're instead interested in the wellness space. This is still a good fit for you because at the end of the day, cannabis is wellness. Their purpose, process, research, they're going deep into, the scientifics around their company to emphasize about, how they've built a better mousetrap here. I think these guys were banking on the fact that a lot of the products being brought to market are just Me Too products. Here's another gummy. We see blueberries selling, we'll do a blueberry gummy. We see CBN's getting adoption, we gotta have our CBN. These guys said, let's do a bunch of product consumer market research, figure out what people actually want, then build the product. So a little bit of storytelling at play here to kind of walk the investor through their fundraising journey along with their product development journey. They went a little bit crazy here. Some things are emphasized, just a lot to look at. This is just a little bit distracting once again, where this is a relatively clean slide, but there's just so many numbers here. 1 milligram, 4 milligram, 70 milligram, which one is it? 2.0, 20 to 30 minute onset. It's just a little, and all these different specific vitamins, just saying you have a proprietary blend of different vitamins that help with, X, Y, and Z is just as effective as listing every specific vitamin, if not more effective. This slide I absolutely love, and it explains my point perfectly. This is a glamour metric. This is a hammer drop moment. This is something that doesn't have all of the clutter of their other slides and instead just brings the investor straight to the point, which is 4 milligrams we found to be the best dose. We've researched it, we've validated it, and that's where we're hanging our hat. Nutrition facts, some testimonials. The only thing that would have made this slide a little bit better is I want to see these people. I don't know who John, Vienne, Celine are. I want to see photos of them. I want to know where they work. Because a testimonial saying that this is the best edible around hits a lot harder if it's a top retailer saying that versus it's your friend saying that. So this one, I think this quote is from Colleen King, who is an expert in the cannabis space on edibles and wellness products, but huge missed opportunity by not explaining that context. Because that quote, if you know Colleen, carries a hell of a lot more weight. Coming soon. It's never a bad idea to hint at what's coming soon. The one thing I really want to advise against is name dropping or including any partnership that isn't official. Because I've seen companies say, hey, we have this partnership with Audi, the car company. An investor forwarded the deck to Audi and said, oh, you guys work with them? And they said, no, we've had one conversation. It was a half hour. I didn't agree to anything. So needless to say, Audi went to that company and said, get us out of your deck right now. We don't permit this at all. And the deal we were working on is now done because you were going out there trying to say we have a relationship we don't have. So this stuff can bite you in the ass. One way that people get around it, maybe they will still, put a coming soon. Maybe they'll get permission directly from that partner to say that we're actively in talks. You can hint at some of this stuff, obviously in personal conversations with an investor, but anything being distributed, being shared, you don't want to include it. It's an obvious one, but once again, these are one of the easy things that can kill your deal. And my biggest problem with this deck, though, we go from nutrition facts to testimonials to coming soon to thank you. Where is the ask? What is the purpose of this deck? How much are they raising? What else are they looking for? But one, to give them a little bit of their props, this is always a great best practice. Include your contact information on your final slide, because especially if you're pitching in person, and your first slide as well, a lot of times investors pull out their phones the second someone starts talking, takes a photo of their first slide. If they miss it, they'll take a photo of their last slide. And then when they get home, that's how they know who to follow up with. So if your name and contact information is on that slide, it's very unlikely they're going to go out and search around and hunt down your email. They're going to move on to the next project and say whatever. So tiny little tips and tricks that can make a big difference. All right, next one here is a favorite, Cadre. Madison Shockley famously has gone through, DCR. I advise for Cadre. This is the deck that we actually built in conjunction with Ease Momentum when he was going through that program. Cadre obviously has launched their retail in South LA. They have launched their brand in conjunction with Green Label. So this is an example of an actual deck that has worked to raise money in the LA area. So team slide, this one's obviously a little bit outdated. Advisor slide, obviously if you're pitching, local communities, it can be worthwhile to include people who are known in the local communities. But he's getting into the storytelling right off the bat with the problem slide. At the end of the day, dispensaries are paying a lot more. They're really, at the time, there was still some gaps in the South LA market, the social equity market when it came to retail operations. So, obviously emphasizing that's the goal here. And, they wanted to do a lot more with this dispensary. It isn't just supposed to be product retail. It has a huge parking lot that they want to use for, for different industry events, for networking, for concerts. They had a Low Russell show when they opened it up, and that immediately built them a loyal base of customers who knew that they had some of the best deals in town. They've been doing sponsorships and partnerships, even with groups in food locally, to kind of be that cannabis element, to actually have on-site sales facilitated by their dispensary. Unique partnerships, community first. That's what they wanted to emphasize. And you can see that story does come through even this earlier in the deck. Now, naturally, of course, investors still need to see the money. They still need to see, a little bit of information on the products they're looking to bring to market. Here's a real-world example of it. So this is great because it shows investors that this isn't still in R&D mode. These are real-world products. This is what it's going to look like when it's production ready, which gives them that sense of urgency. Great team slide here showing all about social equity growth in different markets, showing that this can be a place to invest in that will still generate returns. Like I said earlier, headed back to community. This actually, is meant to show how much unutilized space there is to do community events. And of course, big partnerships they have. Obviously, this one big advantage this deck could benefit from is just put the logos here instead of just listing these names. There's just so much to look at on this page. You want to keep it as short and sweet as possible. Some of the events they're working on, some of the press they've secured, and then this roadmap just explaining about their rollout strategy looks like. Not a huge fan of this competitive grid. This is the old school way to do it, the Magic Quadrant. I'll show you an example of another deck of more of a preferred method in which you put your competitors here, or you put your competitors on top, and you have little check marks for everything you do that that they don't have. Financial projections, these are so absolutely critical to build out, especially if you don't have a CTO or a CFO. There are a lot of fractional CFOs. But one thing I find early stage companies often struggle with is they want to go out and have a valuation put on their company. They think it's something they need to do, even at a very early stage. Even in tech, the only time that you're going to actually pay a group to go in and say, oh, our valuation is, $10 million, $100 million, is when you get to that Series A level and beyond. Anybody raising their first round, their pre-revenue, that is still going to be a pre-seed raise. There's a small network of investors who, like I said earlier, are really looking to invest in the founder, sometimes even more than the market. So pre-seed, these check sizes usually max out, around 500K. I've never seen a pre-seed round that much bigger, except in like hardcore biotech. Your seed round, typically your ask is $1 million, $2 million, somewhere around that, depending on what you're building. Obviously, if you're going vertical or building retail or large-scale cultivation, it's going to be significantly higher. The Series A level, comes in after seed. We're talking 5, 10 million, much bigger check sizes. Some companies go all the way through Series D, through Series E and beyond. But at that point, a lot of companies are just focused on exiting or going public. So financial projections, at the end of the day, you can often find these in other pitch decks. Other founders have already built them. And like I mentioned on websites like SlideBean, you can actually see those real world decks. Easy ask, here's what they're looking for. Easy contact information on the final page. You can see the one thing I wanted to point out, knocked it out of the park with cohesive branding. This whole thing feels really professional. It feels like a sales one sheet. It feels like a website. These images feel nicely integrated onto the page. They're high resolution. That goes a incredibly long way. Obviously, super attractive logo as well. And I like this one as well. This is actually a Series A deck from a company I work with, Garden House Brands. They do Dom Pen, which is a single-serve disposable vape, and Koa, which is infused pre-rolls. But they're actually been around for about 10 years. They're in about 8 different markets. And when they went to raise this check, naturally they were targeting cannabis VCs. Green AXS ended up closing out their round. They found one of these like big board members of MedMen and stuff, ended up giving them a large angel check as well. And they found these guys largely just through local networking events, and leaning on their existing investors, existing partners to put out that bat signal and say, hey, Garden House is out there, they're doing another round, but more importantly, here's why you should look at them. Bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, 8 states, over 10 million units sold. That's going to stop people in their tracks. Legal disclaimers are worthwhile, especially if you're pitching on stage at large-scale events, soliciting investors. Usually, if you're at a pitch event that requires this, the organizers will tell you, but it can be a good best practice to just have one pulled together. These guys start out really strong. You can see why I'm obsessed with this. I mean, instead of just a screenshot of the product, this feels so nicely integrated with the page. You can see that they've obviously invested in slick design, and these glamour metrics just start the deck off on the best possible footing. They've already had a ton of success. They're already in a bunch of states. This is the kind of thing in a market where investors are obviously a little bit apprehensive. This is the kind of validation they look for. You're always going to have an easier time, obviously as your traction starts to scale. So these guys building, convenient products. They have the COAs, they have the celebrity partnerships they're leaning on with Mike Tyson and, a bunch of other different groups. And of course, they're in Canada as well. So this map is easy to wrap your head around. This can really work even just specific to the LA market with what areas you're servicing. And of course, showing the growth of these markets. The investors are investing in your plan. They're investing in the go-to-market strategy. Where you're at right now is important, but it's a lot more important to show them where you're headed. And I love that they pulled out one specific, almost use case study here that specifically, in BC, they're killing it. You want to show if you're getting any group, any market, any partner that's really, really latching on and loving your product, especially if, for instance, something in Canatech where you have power users who say, oh my God, your data is better than anything else. I check it every single week. Those are the people that you need to bring into the fold, build personal relationships with, and really lean on them to give good feedback. Not just for ammunition for your deck, but also your sales materials, also your website. Because a lot of the stuff you're putting in a pitch deck is the exact same stuff that's going to drive someone to move forward on your website or even as physical literature at your store, your facility, your XYZ. showing a little bit more on some of their major partners. This is pretty straightforward on e-commerce, obviously being part of their secret sauce. Once again, real world examples, real screenshots of their actual website, their actual marketplace. You don't want wireframes, you don't want mock-ups. You need to show that this thing is functional, even if it's not fully functional yet. You can make them aware of it, but still show off something that's ready for prime time. Of course, just further emphasizing traction, showing new products they're actively developing. Of course, live resin, CBN, a couple years ago, this wasn't super fully adopted and still was part of their secret sauce. And of course, some of their go-to-market, different creative campaigns they use to acquire customers. Excuse me. One thing I always emphasize is don't keep this super generic. Don't say, oh, our go-to-market is to use social media. That's not adding value. That's not unique to you. That's par for the course. You want to show them, not only am I doing social media, but I have 100 influencers that have already tapped and have already got them to agree to promote this. That's actionable in ways that just saying, we expect to see some growth just simply isn't. These guys are really big on the culture side. They do live events, live music events that have nothing to do with cannabis. They do collaborations with streetwear designers that have nothing to do with cannabis, because at the end of the day, they're trying to build something different. There's an old adage, especially in tech, and it's it's, of course, is it scalable? I think, a lot of the more interesting companies out there, a lot of the unicorns I've seen have one thing in common. It's that they did a lot of shit that didn't scale. They did a lot of shit that on paper shouldn't have made a huge difference, but ultimately did because it set them apart and it made their identity as a company, really come out in everything they do. It's a lot easier, especially if you're a high net worth, an angel investor, to invest in somebody like this. Who's hitting to your passions of music and, culture, versus, somebody who's, just so strictly focused on the numbers. So once again, it's all about targeting these decks towards your different audiences. Most founders will have, at least 2 different versions of their deck, one for public consumption, one for private, and you just keep it updated as much as possible. I feel like every single deck of every company I've ever built was version 11. I think we were always at least a dozen or so slight tweaks before we felt like anything was ready for prime time. These guys emphasize their giving back campaigns, some of the nonprofits that they've partnered with here. Obviously, great branding on their new Koa products. They're showing growth. This is a little bit of a ball dropped on their behalf because to me, this is one of the most compelling parts of this deck. The fact that they've added 90 stores in the past years, including several major chains. Who are those major chains? 90 stores in 1 year isn't a crazy clip, but it still shows that even being on the market for this long, there's still uncharted territory out there and they're still seeing heavy demand. An even better metric would be 45 of those stores came via direct referral from an existing partner who vouched for us. There's ways to paint a picture here with what you're telling them. A little basic team information, and that brings us to the end of this deck. Now, the $1 million question, of course, is who in the audience would like to volunteer their deck? And I will go through it slide by slide. Anybody? Yeah, there we go. Let's do it. Awesome. Well, let's get started. Slide 1. Queen Mary, experience the difference. I like it. First thoughts, really, really like the logo, like the iconography here. I think all of these at the top just add a ton of legitimacy with State Fair, with Emerald Cup. More importantly, it's regardless of if you've been an investor in whatever state, these are known organizations like LeafLink and WeedCon that regardless of what market they're in, they're gonna say, okay, this carries a lot of weight. Even if they didn't attend the State Fair, they're not familiar with the State Fair, they know it's a pretty damn big honor to be featured and of course, part of the award ceremony. The one missed opportunity here, I would love to see name and email, maybe even, www.queenmary.com, or just in the bottom here, just for what I mentioned earlier during live pitches. Some of these logos are a little bit stretched out. This one's a little bit hot dogged for me. I think the Cannabis Awards thing as well. It might just be how it's projected today, but always tighten that up. I also don't like the white box here. You want to find the vector image that doesn't have the white box so it'll fit right onto that background. But either way, I see this and I say, I'm excited. This is a fun graphic. Cannabis at the end of the day is something that's entertaining. Like, this doesn't look out of place to me. It feels professional. Let's see, got the disclaimer, our story. Oh, perfect. So I think it is a little bit of a display issue, just how the deck downloaded. But in general, this is tight. It's maybe a hair too long. I don't see any, what I like to call buzzword soup, where it's just trying to throw in like, we are AI driven, and it says a lot without saying anything. But this right here, I think is actually very well crafted to really hit on antidepressants, stimulants, opiates. I mean, this immediately will tell somebody, this is a good fit for investors who care about this space. Queen Mary is a brand designed to vivify their day. I like it. The quote is obviously from you, Tiana. And then seeing this smattering of humans, I think is perfect. Once again, this is an industry where it's all about, human connection and plant-based medicine. And this slide says that's exactly what I'm in for. You have excluded the guys, but that's totally okay. If, of course, the rest of this deck says, hey, that's our audience, that's what we're going for. But always love to see, regardless of the product, if it can apply to different genders. So Tiana, really strong. Let's see. So don't like the black here. Also black and white. This one's a little bit stretched out. This is a vacation pic, and that's just, it's nice, but once again, not a vector logo. So I would ask, that's one of the easiest things you can do, especially because this is so early in the deck, but get these to feel consistent, take them all on the same day, at very least, show them what you're looking for and have them send in something as close as possible to that. 7 years of cannabis experience, it's great. I would like to see what sort of experience, specifically with distro, specifically with brands. That can definitely add a little bit of a punch, because with the team slide, what an investor is doing is saying, okay, well, what are the gaps here? They might have somebody who's really good at tech, somebody who's really good at finance, but oh no, they don't have anybody who was a marketer. If they see those gaps, not only does it can paint a bad picture, but it can also sometimes work in your favor, where if there is something you're missing, you can make them very aware of the fact that you are trying to recruit a CTO, or maybe you have an interim CTO who will come on full time once you close your round of funding. But either way, you always want to make sure with your team slide that you're checking those mental boxes that they're looking for of, does this company have somebody who can, bring in clients? Does it have somebody who built a great product? Does it have a head cheerleader and fundraiser at the top? Who's competent, can raise money, can keep this team running forward. That's all they're looking for here. I don't like that the font, I think, is the same on all of them, but the spacing is different. Like here compared to here, you want this to all feel tight and even. Let's see, Chief Growth Officer, 8-Ware Small Management Experience, Series 7, grade, license holder, BI-driven instrument marketing specialist. I like it. The one other tweak is inconsistent capitalization. This is another really easy tweak you can make on your deck. Like capitalized, but like everything in this section is, but in this section, it's not. License holder, experience, cannabis experience. So if you're going to, capitalize everything, just make sure it's consistent for all of them. If you're not, obviously same applies. Always ready for financial investors. I think this is okay. This to me doesn't add much. I would want to see that you have a special deal with them. Usually you're not going to list certain partners unless it's part of your sauce. So like, high impact is giving us, 50,000 worth of free work in exchange for this. We made a deal in which, I pulled my design abilities and did a logo for them in exchange for some free audit work. If you can impart something like that, that shows an investor that you were scrappy, you're able to work out a unique deal, that can definitely add some punch. But otherwise, no need to really include service providers unless they're doing something like going above and beyond, taking an equity stake or similar, which obviously equity stakes from a service provider are a little bit precarious. We can talk about that if anybody has questions. Easy daily regimen. Easy as 1, 2, 3. Boost espresso, enchant strawberry lemonade, 3 moonstruck lavender berry. So what I like about this is my eye knows exactly where to focus. I'm going from left side of the page to right. All products, vegan, fast acting, full spectrum. What I don't like is how this has been kind of relegated to the very bottom here, because at the end of the day, especially if you can put numbers behind fast acting and say, hey, we're using Vertosa, we know that this is going to kick in within 15 minutes, that becomes a little part of your underlying magic. If it's vegan, I don't think you need to specify that it's pectin, but there are some new different type of like tapioca formulated gummy. Some of this stuff can be part of your like I said, your secret sauce. So yeah, I would potentially either eliminate this or make this a little bit of a kind of like what's a good word for this? Either part of a separate one sheet or kind of an expansion slide at the end of your deck, where it's like if they want to dig deep into the product specifics, you have that. But this deck is about you guys raising money. It's not just about the products. So you have that information on hand, but you don't try to overwhelm them with it. I really like obviously seeing anything nootropics, adaptogens. This is a huge point of differentiation, and if you look at what, for instance, beverage and edible companies are where they're starting to innovate, where they're starting to see adoption, it is on stuff like ashwagandha or CBN being included. So to me, this works. These flavors all sound super palatable. I don't need to know any more information about who did the flavoring. If Sovereign did it or a big heavy-hitting name, great. It can be worth adding them. But in general, super easy, and you're starting this deck off right away by making them aware of what you're actually pushing, what you're selling, which is great. Too many people get too bogged down into the numbers before they actually just center everything into, here's what we're trying today. And one thing that is worth saying, I invested in Wonder without seeing their deck. When I threw into their SPV, that beverage company, it's because they shared some numbers with me. I knew other people who had gotten in on that SPV, and I talked to them about why they made the investment. And then what really sold me is Wonder goes, every single investor that we have has tried these products to the point where I will not let you invest unless you try my fucking products. So I said, game on. One of the founders came to my house, dropped off a sampler that day, and was like, seriously, try these. Let me know what you think. If you don't like them, I don't want you as part of this. So I loved that they put their money where their mouth is. They really said, we know that we have a winning flavor here. And they were that bold to mandate that from everybody. It shows that they're looking for investors who care about the personal side of this, the passion side of it, not just the numbers. So that could be a great tactic for you as well. Got to try them before you can buy them. Problem and solution combined onto one slide unfortunately, this is my least favorite slide in the deck so far. Do not like these generic, I don't know the right term for it. They're just stock images. You definitely, even if it's worth taking a photo yourself, this doesn't add anything. Being frustrated is a problem. You don't need to depict people being frustrated. So I'd lose this, and instead, maybe a better example here would be this Harris poll, and pull that right here and say show me that 62% of consumers. Instead of telling me about those 62% of consumers with a pie chart or similar, that will stop them in ways that this won't. Inconsistent capitalization, recreational does need to be capitalized, lack of women-focused medicinal cannabis products. This is good, but I want numbers. If you can say that, women are 50%, or these days, we're seeing further growth in the women category. Now it's 60% of cannabis buyers in LA are predominantly women. Like, that's something that even gives it an extra kick in the ass. Remove the bullet points, because sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. When you're doing anything that's just a list like this, you usually don't need them. First company that provides a daily regimen catered to women and veterans as a natural alternative to addictive prescriptions. This is, once again, an area that can get you into a little bit of trouble, especially if they have an investment into a company that does this or has been just as a good rule of thumb, just don't ever put first or only into your deck. Because even if you're right, a lot of these guys are cynical. They're just assholes. Like, I'm just being really honest. And they're just like, I know for a fact you're not. Even if they've never actually spoken with that company, they all subscribe to the mentality that it's all been done before. Euphoric high that promotes function and productivity. Awesome. Any way to quantify that is what's really going to carry this over. We did our focus group says, euphoria is the #1 effect that they're getting off of this. To the tune where 70% of respondents say that's the #1 effect they're feeling. Something like that, makes it more actionable here. And then the ability to self-dose. This right here, I think, is a big part of what the problem is here, is that there aren't enough companies out there with women-focused products, but also there's just so much inconsistency in the edible space when it comes to dosing. Obviously, this product helps solve that, via this formulation.